The gavel's crack echoed like a countdown as whispers knifed through the glass room. I'm Calder Vance, in my 50s, a former finance executive. My pocket watch pressed cold in my palm while accusations stacked higher than the gray Seattle sky. What would you have done in my seat? I was staring at the polished mahogany table, not the faces. If I met their eyes, I might not keep my temper. The wood had tiny scratches near the edge, grooves my thumb found, and worried like prayer beads. The chairman's gavel lay still now, but its last crack still rang in my ears, echoing like a countdown. Maybe it was. The mist outside pressed against the glass walls, soft gray smudges over Puget Sound. I focused on that blur, on the way the fairies looked like pale ghosts, anything but the eyes circling me. Miles cleared his throat first. Always Miles. He leaned back, hands folded as if this was a seminar, not an execution. Transparency, he said, drawing the word out like taffy. That's what the pension committee wants. Transparency and trust. Eva smiled without warmth. She had her glasses perched low the way my old teacher used to before calling someone a fool. She tapped a printed memo against her notebook. These, she said, voice, sugared with sympathy, don't inspire confidence. Her words didn't hurt as much as the paper itself. White sheets, black letters in cold font. My name wedged between fiduciary breach and allocation irregularities. Each syllable landed like a slap. I gripped the pocket watch in my jacket pocket until the metal bit my palm. It was heavy, steady, a circle of brass, worn soft at the edges. Vance, 1926. My grandfather's name, my father's before me. I thought of him oiling its gears on Sundays, saying, "A man's word keeps better than time." The chairman adjusted his tie, pretending to glance at the agenda. Nobody moved for a long stretch. The only sound was the low whine of the HVAC and the shuffle of pages. Someone's coffee was burnt. The smell clung like a bad rumor. Finally, Miles leaned forward. His cufflinks winked under the harsh LED lights. "You've had time, Calder. Maybe too much. Pension funds don't misplace themselves." I didn't misplace anything. My voice was steady. That was something. Eva slid a page across the table with a fingertip. The sound was a whisper, but it carried more than shouting. "Then you can explain this." I didn't look down. I didn't need to. I'd seen enough tables of figures, bold headers, red annotations bleeding like wounds. I'd read them at 3 a.m., with the dishwasher humming and my phone buzzing like a trapped fly. When the chairman spoke, it was almost gentle. "Prepare your defense. If you have one." The meeting drained out like water from a cracked glass. Chairs scraped. Miles stacked his papers slow, deliberate, like a man savoring dessert. He glanced at me, lips curving. "Hope your lawyer's better than your memory, brother." I let the word hang. Brother. Not blood, but something close once, before money and boards and the quiet greed that wears polished shoes. I walked out without touching the doorframe, though my hands itched to leave marks. The drizzle hit me first cold pinpricks through my shirt. Seattle rained steady and without mercy. I pulled my collar up and headed for the elevators. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Voicemail. One new message. I pressed play and listened to the receptionist's careful voice. "Mr. Vance, reporters called." "Should we respond?" The doors slid shut on the mist and the questions waiting in the hallway. By morning, my name wasn't just in board minutes, it was trending. The coffeehouse windows were fogged with breath and steam, soft halos of streetlights blurring the frost outside. Inside, the hiss of the milk frother tangled with NPR news chatter about Midwest storms and market jitters. I sat near the counter, coat still zipped, staring at a cup of latte whose foam art sagged like a tired smile. My phone vibrated again, hard enough to make the marble counter hum. PR inbox 46 new emails. Subject lines stacked like bricks. Statement request. Comment on allegations. Vancegate. I tapped one, then stopped. I couldn't read all that yet. Lori Ames walked in like the cold quiet, but sharp. Gray coat, belted tight hair, pinned neat. She ordered tea without looking at me, but when she turned, her eyes flicked toward my phone screen, quick and guilty. Then again, slower, before she tucked her phone back in her bag, as if hiding a loaded weapon. "Morning," she said, settling across from me. Her voice was too light. "Rough night," I shrugged. My throat was dry from not speaking, from holding everything in. "Define rough." She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "You're on the blogs, Calder. Front and center. Ethics probe pension funds. Big words, you know." I glanced at the radio above the pastry case. A different voice now, something about corporate governance standards. The barista looked up when my name came through the speaker, then pretended to wipe the counter harder than necessary. "Who leaked the memo?" I asked. My voice sounded flat, even to me. Lori stirred her tea, the spoon clinking in slow rhythm. "Leaks happen when dams crack." Nature of pressure. The phone buzzed again. A headline flashed from a financial blog: "Vance exec faces ethics probe." Below it, a grainy screenshot of a memo, red lines circling phrases like fiduciary breach. The watermark was still there, internal. My chest tightened. Notifications kept coming, each one a pebble in an avalanche. Twitter tags. LinkedIn pings reporters requesting comment. Somewhere in the noise, I saw Grace's name, then realized it wasn't her. Just someone quoting her quote from an old company gala photo. I dialed her anyway, knowing it would go to voicemail. It did. When I opened Instagram, her feed loaded instantly. A sunlit table, pancakes dusted with sugar, captioned "Family brunch with 3 laughing faces, none of them mine." I left a cash tip by the untouched latte. The foam had melted into pale swirls like a storm seen from far above. Lori stayed seated, thumbs busy under the table, probably sending another cryptic update to whoever waited behind the curtain. Outside, the wind slapped hard, cutting through wool. My phone buzzed in my pocket as I pulled the door shut behind me. I opened LinkedIn without meaning to habit muscle memory. The banner at the top was "Merciless Halhat Vancegate trending." Feet moving, mine not. The sidewalk shimmered with thin ice. Every comment I scrolled through felt like a tap on glass, testing for cracks. If proven true, strip his credentials. About time someone audits these execs. The cold air knifed my lungs. Somewhere behind me, a car horn blared, too bright, too real. Then the text came in from Lori, just 3 words, glowing blue. Nothing personal. I stopped walking, watched my breath curl into white ghosts, read the message again, and again. Another comment slid into view: "Ethics starts at the top." My heart raced against the weight of the pocket watch in my coat, ticking like a secret. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred the wind, gnawing at my collar, wondering how fast a name could freeze solid in public ice. The diner smelled like burnt bacon and wet wool. Harvey's coat dripping on the vinyl seat across from me. Rain clung to everything, Even the sugar packets looked damp, their edges curling like tired smiles. The windows were fogged, a thin river of condensation running down each pane, framing a gray morning that hadn't decided if it would ever brighten. Harvey shook out his sleeve and ordered coffee before saying my name. His voice was the same as always, flat like asphalt after a rain, but it carried weight, the kind that made you stop pretending. "They want you quiet because they fear your receipts," he said, sliding into the booth like a man clocking in for overtime. I stared at the manila envelope he laid between us. It was fat enough to matter, thin enough to vanish under a coat if I lost my nerve. My fingers didn't move. "You didn't come here for breakfast," I said. He smirked and waved at the waitress for extra cream. Always the observant one. Country music murmured from a radio near the pie case, a twang about second chances and old highways. The waitress poured black coffee into thick mugs, the steam lifting like small ghosts. I wrapped my hands around mine, hoping the heat would work its way up to my chest. It didn't. "What's in there?" I asked, nodding at the envelope. "What you missed, or what you ignored." HOA dues that don't match their transfers. Notes on 401k discrepancies. Enough to make a forensic accountant blush. I laughed once, dry and sharp. That'll play great on Twitter. Harvey's face didn't change. He slid the envelope closer, the paper rasping against formica like sandpaper. "This isn't for them. It's for you." I stared at the flap at the crease where someone's thumbnail had pressed it shut. My reflection warped in the stainless napkin holder beside it. Tired eyes collar limp rain freckling my jacket. "This could drag Grace deeper if it blows," I said finally. The words felt like gravel. Harvey leaned in his coat, squeaking against the vinyl. His breath smelled of black coffee and winter air. "Truth doesn't ruin families. Lies do." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that peeling this open wouldn't set everything on fire. But Grace hadn't answered my calls. Not once. Her life had gone picture perfect on social feeds, no room for drizzle or boardroom wreckage. Harvey sipped his coffee, eyes never leaving mine. "You're not the first man to take a hit for someone else's ambition. Question is, do you stay down?" The rain hammered harder against the glass, 1,000 knuckles on a locked door. I gripped the envelope, felt the grit of the paper under my fingertips, and the weight inside like a dare. Voices rose from the counter, a couple of old-timers arguing about gas prices. Their laughter cracked like old vinyl records. The smell of grease thickened. I thought of the boardroom's polished wood, the sterile chill of LED lights, and the way Miles had smiled when he called me brother. Harvey set his mug down, the ceramic clink soft but final. "Call me," he murmured, "when you decide if you're still Vance." He slid out of the booth without waiting for my answer. His coat left a dark, wet print on the seat like a shadow that might outlast the morning. I stayed fingers on the envelope, listening to the rain rattle against the glass until it sounded like applause or warning. The pen hovered over the line like a guillotine blade, black ink poised silent, waiting for the smallest tremor to make it permanent. My name was typed in bold above the signature line, clean as a tombstone. The conference room smelled of toner and fear disguised as civility. Miles sat across from me, all charm lacquered over steel, his cufflinks flashing like signals. Eva perched to his left legal pad in front of her pen, capped eyes sharp and dry as salt. "Just an acknowledgement for review," Miles said, smile carved to fit the moment. "You know, so we can all move forward like adults." My fingers brushed the paper, cool, smooth, unyielding. The hush of a copy machine floated in from somewhere down the hall, rhythmic and indifferent. My pulse tried to match it, and failed. The pen scratched softly as I wrote slow enough to look deliberate, fast enough to look convinced. My hand stopped at the last stroke. Not signature, just initials on the corner, neat and meaningless. A mark that said nothing except I was still in the game. Miles didn't blink, but I caught the tick in his jaw, the smallest clench like a wire pulled tight. Eva's glance darted to him, then to me, then back to the paper, as if memorizing the fracture lines in our dance. Some people stock food for storms. I stock evidence. The apartment smelled like paper and electricity heat from the old scanner fighting the November chill. Boxes ringed the living room like fortifications, each marked with dates and abbreviations only I could love. My laptop hummed on the coffee table, blue glow washing across stacks of invoices and receipts that looked harmless until you laid them side by side. The scanner's light slid slow across another page, its beam thin as a scalpel. County clerk seal smudged near the margin, tiny but sharp as a blade if you knew where to cut. I saved the PDF, dropped it into the encrypted folder, then checked the clock. Nearly 2 a.m. The only sound beyond the scanner's sigh was faint static from the radio I kept on for company, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Screenshots pinged into the folder, HOA invoices stacked against internal ledgers, notarized transfer forms with signatures neat as lies. Each click felt like loading a weapon I'd never fire, quiet, patient, lethal, only if someone forced my hand. A draft email glowed in another tab. Subject line, "If I disappear." My fingers hovered over the text. Who to send it to, Harvey, sure. Maybe one journalist who hadn't sold his soul for ad revenue. The cursor blinked like it knew I wouldn't hit send tonight. Not yet. I showered, dressed, stared at the clock until dinner wasn't just a meal, but a test. Grace had agreed to meet me, which counted as a miracle or a trap. The restaurant was too bright, all polished silver and clinking glasses, the air thick with vinegar from someone's artisanal salad dressing. Grace sat already, phone on the table like a third guest. She didn't hug me. Didn't smile either. You look tired, she said, eyes scanning me like an audit. Been busy, I answered, pulling out the chair slow. Her menu stayed closed. So did her face. Mom says you always choose pride. I let that sit. The waiter poured water. Ice cracked like tiny verdicts. Pride's cheap, I said finally. Truth costs more. She laughed sharp and soft at once. You think this is about truth? Dad, you're radioactive. I can't even post a picture without someone DMing me a headline. Her words landed harder than Miles ever could. I reached for bread, didn't taste it. It'll settle, I said, though we both knew storms don't settle. They move. We ordered. We ate in slices of silence so thin you could see light through them. Her fork clicked against the plate, rhythmic cold. When the check came, she didn't let me pay. Just stood, wrapped her scarf, and said, "Call me when this is over, if it ever is." The door's click echoed like a gavel when she left. Back home, I sat before the laptop again, wet coat still on my shoulders. The draft email waited patient as a judge. I stared at the subject line, fingers resting on the keys. Blink, blink, blink. The cursor's rhythm matched my pulse. And for the first time, I wondered if the storm I'd been stalking for was already inside. When I set the pen down, something shifted. A weight slipped from my pocket. The sound was soft at first, a muted clink, then the sharp kiss of glass on marble. The pocket watch. It lay on the floor, face down, its chain curled like a dead snake. I reached for it, but not before the fracture flashed under the fluorescent light, a spiderweb crack across the glass, radiating from the center, like a wound. Eva's eyes flicked down, lingered a beat too long, then rose slow, with something glinting satisfaction or prophecy. "You okay there?" Miles asked lightly, though his voice had an edge that could cut steel. I forced a smile, slipped the broken watch into my palm. It felt heavier now, like shame with teeth. "I'm fine," I said, which was the kind of lie people like him never bothered to check. The meeting ended without ceremony, just the rustle of papers and the soft thud of doors that didn't care who walked through them. I left with the broken watch pressing into my pocket like a verdict. Outside, the sky was rinsed pale spring light, bouncing off wet sidewalks. Seattle smelled of damp earth and diesel, of beginnings that never started. By midnight, my laptop glowed against the dark like a lighthouse for the lost. I scrolled through half-finished statements, PR drafts that read like obituaries for the living. My fingers hovered, then dropped when the new email bloomed at the top. Subject line timer set. No greeting, no signature. Just 2 words pulsing like a silent alarm. The cursor blinked in the dark, steady and cruel. The camera light turned red, and so did my pulse. Spotlights seared my face as I stepped onto the stage. The auditorium smelled like carpet cleaner, and nerves hundreds of seats filled with people who looked like they'd paid to watch a hanging. LED panels bathed the walls in cold blue hashtags, crawling like ticker tape. Hashtag Vancegate our ethics, first, hashtag leadership matters. Somewhere in the blur, a phone screen reflected my own name trending again, just like Lori promised. The moderator's voice crackled from behind the mic stand. "Mr. Vance will now address the board and stakeholders." I gripped the podium edge, the wood slick under my palm, and let my eyes skim the back row instead of Miles's grin in the front. A red light blinked on the camera rig, steady as a countdown. I unfolded my prepared remarks. Pages thick as a confession. My throat worked once dry before I spoke. "Thank you for allowing me to clarify my position." The words were calm, like ice that cracks underfoot. Phones lit up across the room. I caught the low staccato of push notifications pinging from every corner, sharp as BB pellets on metal. Finance blogs, local business feeds. Even a Seattle lifestyle account had tagged the stream, probably with a caption about corporate drama and craft coffee culture. Halfway through the second paragraph, I saw Lori's name flash on my watch. "They're circling. Make it count." Miles stood at stage right hands clasped like a groom waiting for vows. His suit was charcoal tie, blood-red pocket square folded into a perfect knife point. When I finished, he slid closer, wearing that private school smirk he thought looked like confidence. "Beautiful speech," he murmured as the moderator thanked me. "Now let's sign it and put this to bed." A handler in black approached with a leather folder, its hinge gleaming under stage lights. My signature was the price of survival on paper anyway. The crowd hushed like they knew this was the blow. I uncapped the pen, steady as an old surgeon, and bent over the folder. My reflection wavered in the glossy page protector. Game theory, Harvey had called it. Give them a page they want, not the one they need. The nib scratched once, a sound I felt in my teeth. Done. I handed the folder back, pulse calm now, in a way that worried even me. Miles leaned in his cologne sharp with citrus and victory. "Game over, brother." His whisper was silk laced with wire. That's when I slid the envelope from my inside pocket, its corner stained with old coffee. I laid it on the podium like an afterthought. No theatrics, just gravity. The cameras pivoted. One lens caught the handwriting on the flap, faint and scrawled dates, ledger codes, signatures notarized in crimson ink. Receipts that sang louder than any hashtag. Ava's eyes flicked from her phone to the envelope, pupils widening before snapping back to the glowing screen. Her thumbs kept moving, live tweeting the moment like a surgeon who couldn't look away from blood. Before we close, the moderator's voice rang brittle and bright. "Mr. Vance has requested one final exhibit." The red camera light pulsed again, hotter this time, as if it knew. My fingers rested on the envelope. Behind me, the LED panels froze mid-scroll like even the hashtags were holding their breath. And then the zoom lens whirred, closing the distance inch by inch until all the world saw was a piece of paper that might burn down a kingdom. They asked for silence, but the room got louder. Cameras popping like hail on tin gasps, folding into whispers. And then the sound of my name, restored syllable by syllable. I stood where the lights turned faces into pale moons, the heat pressing on the back of my neck. The envelope lay open on the podium, pages fanned like cards in a rigged game. Notary stamps glinted under LED's crimson seals, humming louder than any word I could speak. I raised the first sheet. Transfer dated August 14th, 2020. Signature Miles Vance. Beneficiary account ending in 4437. My voice didn't tremble, but I caught the echo rippling through the auditorium, bouncing off glass walls like a verdict. Miles shifted in his seat, his tie now a noose. Eva typed so hard the keys clicked like teeth. The moderator, pale as printer paper, gripped the mic. "Please order." But the cameras were feasting. I could feel their lenses like heat lamps on my skin. I read the second page slower, dragging out each figure like a sentence being served. HOA dues diverted. 401k, mismatched with phantom vendors. The hush grew teeth every syllable bit into the empire Miles built on charm and ledger tricks. "Enough." His voice cracked sharp as a glass breaking in the dark. Heads turned. Phones rose higher. Somewhere behind the lights, I heard the faint ripple of streaming notifications. Hashtag Vance Vindicated already crawling up the trend line. The moderator cleared her throat. Words stiff. Effective immediately, Mr. Calder Vance is reinstated to full standing. The gavel dropped once, hollow and final. And then I saw him. Back row near the exit, Harvey in that old gray coat hand buried in his pocket like he owned time itself. His eyes found mine, calm as a man who knew the ending before the story began. He stepped forward through the press swarm, each camera flash striking silver in his hair. When he reached me, he didn't speak, just opened his palm. The pocket watch rested there whole again, glass smooth as still water. No cracks, no scars. I took it slow, the weight of it sinking into my hand, cool against my skin. A breath I didn't know I'd caged slid free. Around us, voices tangled with the static crackle of mics, but all I heard was the click of the watch lid, snapping shut like a circle closing. Applause rolled in uneven at first, then swelling like a tide. Behind me, I caught the shuffle of hard souls, 2 plainclothes officers edging toward Miles. He turned too late, words dying on a mouth gone white. A reporter's voice cut through Mr. Vance. Was it all a setup? I let a thin smile curve. No. It was all on record. The cameras lunged for that line, microphones craning pixels hungry for vindication. Harvey leaned close under the thunder of claps, his whisper curling with the faint scent of pipe tobacco. "Circle closed," he said, voice low as a church bell. "But finish the arc right." The pocket watch ticked once in my palm, louder than the room. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight shift not down but forward. The fire pit hissed when snowflakes fell into it, like the storm was trying to apologize. I stood by the cabin window watching Puget Sound blur into gray against the drifting white. My reflection in the glass looked older than last winter, but lighter somehow, as if someone had loosened a rope around my chest. Inside the logs crackled low popping in brief bursts that reminded me of old typewriter keys. Harvey sat in his usual chair boots, planted wide, folding a glossy sheet between his palms. The Vance Foundation logo gleamed faintly in the firelight blue serif letters. A tagline underneath, "Restoring Trust, one step at a time." Grace's footsteps were soft against the wood floor, but her voice wasn't. "I hated you," she said. No tremor, no cushion. Just flat, like lake ice. For making me doubt blood. I turned slow. She was leaning against the doorway, arms folded, her phone clutched like a lifeline. Her eyes, my mother's eyes, had the same storm gray as the sound outside. "I hated me too," I said, voice barely above the whistle building in the kettle. "Every night I asked if silence would have saved you pain, but silence would have killed more than pride." Grace stepped closer, the boards creaking under her weight. Her phone buzzed, the screen lit with a swirl of hashtags, Vance Foundation, our Scholarship for Trust. She glanced down, then back at me. "You didn't just fight for yourself," she said softer. "Now you burned bridges for all of us." I let that hang a moment, feeling the truth sting even after the verdict. Then Harvey broke in voice like gravel smoothed by years. "And built new ones," he said, sliding the folded brochure across the table. "Restitution hits your account next week. I say we make it bleed into something bigger." Grace picked up the brochure, her fingers brushing the embossed print. Her lips moved as she read scholarships for logistics families, training for second chances. Her thumb hesitated on the edge like she was deciding whether to tear it or keep it. Why, she asked, not at Harvey, but at me. Because I said, pulling the pocket watch from my coat, I don't want the only thing with my name on it to be a scandal hashtag. The lid clicked open, glass flawless hands sweeping smooth as a promise kept. Harvey had done more than fix a watch. He'd soldered something inside me too. Grace sank into the chair across from me. Her mug sat untouched, steam curling like a fragile truce. She traced the rim with her finger round and round the silence, not hostile anymore. Just heavy, waiting. "I hated you," she said again, voice breaking just enough to make it human, "and I missed you at the same time." The kettle shrieked then, saving us from answering. Harvey rose slow like age had been waiting to tap his shoulder and poured water into 3 chipped mugs. Resin smoke curled from the fire. Outside snow thickened, erasing roads and grudges alike. Grace laid her phone face down on the table. The glow leaked through the case, the hashtag still pulsing next to a concept sketch of the foundation logo. She didn't say yes. She didn't have to, not yet. I wound the watch and let it tick against my palm, the sound steady like breathing. For the first time in years, I didn't feel late for anything. When the lights came up, it wasn't a boardroom anymore. It was a hall full of faces I didn't owe but wanted to serve. Rows of folding chairs stretched to the far wall, clacking as people shifted coats off their laps. The scent of polish rose from the podium's wood, mingling with something sweeter. Champagne corks popping somewhere off-frame, muffled under the murmur of voices. Grace stood beside me, her arm linked through mine, her grip brief but firm before she stepped back into the crowd. She didn't say a word, but that squeeze held more than any speech I'd planned to give. I looked out at them, families in thrift store coats, a retired dock worker rolling a wheelchair toward the front, kids clutching spiral notebooks like golden tickets. Behind them the banners gleamed, Vance Foundation launch building futures honoring work. The moderator nodded. My cue. I stepped up to the podium, adjusted the mic. It crackled once like an old fire waking. I won't keep you long, I said. The hum stilled. Phones lowered. We're not fixing the past. We're building futures, the kind that can't be repossessed or rewritten by anyone's ledger. Applause flickered thin at first, then catching like dry timber. On the side screen, the montage rolled black and white photos of warehouse floors, grainy shots of forklifts' hands scarred by decades of labor. Then color bled in kids in new classrooms, logos on vocational hubs, names of retirees etched on plaques like promises. I scanned the room as the images turned. Harvey was near the back, standing like a man who had planted something and now watched it root. When his hands came together, slow, deliberate, it wasn't just clapping. It was punctuation. A period on everything that came before. Grace moved toward him, slipping between chairs. Cameras pivoted as she wrapped her arms around his shoulders, her head bowing against his chest. First time since the storm broke. A shutter clicked so loud I felt it in my teeth. Let them print that. Let the ink run with something whole for once. When the video dimmed, the reporter swarm surged. A woman with a press badge edged close recorder raised like a blade. Mr. Vance, she asked, what does this mean for you? Personally, I thought about all the nights bent over notarized pages, the hollow echo of Grace's door shutting, the feel of a broken watch biting into my palm. I let the silence breathe just long enough to make the words count. It means I said that my father's name means more than money again. The hall erupted, applause folding over itself. Kids laughing, the metallic hiss of another cork giving way. Lights strobed as cameras flared, and for a heartbeat, the room seemed to tilt, spinning on one small, steady axis. I reached into my pocket. The watch gleamed when I drew it out. Glass, flawless gears whispering time like an oath renewed. Stage lights caught its curve as I shook hands with a man whose fingers were calloused like my grandfather's. His boy stood beside him, scholarship letter crumpled in a fist that didn't want to let go. The photographer leaned in for the shot. The watch caught every watt of light, and for the first time I didn't look away. The scent of polished wood still lingered as I set the small box on the table, its lid clicking shut. Inside the watch lay quiet glass, smooth as if it had never fractured. I turned the crown, listening to the hands tick like a gentle reminder. Near the door, a community newsletter hung crooked on the board one corner, curling from the draft. Justice doesn't always arrive with a gavel. It moves in patient steps, and sometimes keeping your name clean matters more than any balance sheet. When everything you trusted bends out of shape, would you choose silence or mend the circle?